That music means it's happening with Velshi and Rule. It's here, but Ali Velshi's hair looks so much better today than normal. Sam Stein of The Bulwark is sitting in for Ali, who is under the weather. Sam, thank you so much for being here. I'm looking outside at the weather, and I can't believe it's raining again. Spring is the season that tortures me. Welcome, Sam. Are you ready for It's Happening with Velshi and Rule?
I am, but why are you throwing strays at Allie like that? That's wrong.
That's how this show works,
Okay.
on and off the air. Okay, so for those of you who are joining us, many of you already sent in questions. If you haven't, you can do it now. As usual, I don't know where to send them. Christina, tell me my year. Where do I tell them to send it? Yes, in the chat, just drop your questions, whatever they are. This is not a show where we are presenting you with news or information or opinion. We're here to answer your questions to the best of our abilities. And Sam, I know there's so much happening in the news, but I really need to start with where I came from because I spent the last 3 days in California for the Milken Institute conference. And now there are all sorts of speakers at Milken. There are people from the finance world, people from the political world, people from the health world. But at the root of what the Milken conference is, it's Michael Milken, right? He's the famous Drexel Burnham financier who eventually went to jail. He was then pardoned by President Trump, but he has since devoted his life to cancer research and improving health expectancies around the world. But at the heart of this conference is a whole bunch of dudes from the leverage finance world who worked for Michael Milken 100 years ago, and he's the reason that they're all the mega superstars in finance today. That's the core of it. But it's now turned into this giant event. It's super impressive. But what blew my mind, Sam, these are all really big people in business. And what I experienced over the last 4 days in LA, people at the conference and outside, even though there was lots of politicians there was like almost no talk of Trump. So they are
Really?
so carefully avoiding. The only time you hear about them talking about him is they're talking about Trump accounts, which they're all super excited about as a way to access people's money that they can then invest in this world. But and the war was talked about like it was a thing of the past, right? And they would talk about like military might, like look what we've done in Venezuela and Cuba's next, and you're sort of like, Iran. But these are the same people that when the war started. It's only going to last 3 days, 4 days. Mind you, find me any war that's lasted that short amount of time. I mean, Desert Storm, I guess, was short, but certainly not that short. But I want to start this, I keep talking, with the exchange that took place today between Rahm Emanuel and Glenn Youngkin, Republican governor of Virginia. Watch this.
What's going to happen in November, and it's going to come as a big
Former.
shock to you. People don't like corruption. They don't like the White House looking like eBay. And you have sold, if it ain't nailed down, you've sold everything. And they don't like a set of politics that goes from the rule of law to the rule of one man. And they're going to reject crony capitalism that has been now the rule of what's happening at the White House. And you're going to get your comeuppance. And you can say all you want about socialism. I can tell you right now that's not where the Democratic Party is. It's about building the middle class.
That escalated quickly. As
Glenn, I want to
popular leaders. The most popular leaders in the Democrat Party today.
I want to compliment
are
you.
avowed socialists.
I want the most popular leader in the Republican Party has sold everything that's not nailed down. Take that ballroom and take everything that's going on with his kids, with what's Secretary of Commerce's kids, and with Witkoff kids. They are making money in this government, and you went into public service to serve good. And I compliment you.
And so did you. And so did you. And now you're sitting here defending a party that wants to have
and you did not walk out. You did not walk out $4 billion richer.
Ram, you may have a point, but
this is why. Let me just begin.
You are deflecting. I think it's
big time.
There is. You do have. Look, I live in New York City, the Socialist Republic of New York City. Thank you very much for that.
Okay, what is your reaction to that?
Well, a couple reactions. One is you notice that Youngkin didn't even try to push back on it, right? I mean, it wasn't like Youngkin said, no, that's not actually what's happening. They're not selling Access or anything in the White House. He didn't even push back on the eBay part because I think everyone thinks the White House looks a little tacky right now. So it is a hard charge to defend against. Two is Rahm has some experience in this. So just a little history lesson. Rahm was running the DCCC back in 2006. That's the committee that elects House Democrats. And their charge during that cycle was Republicans have built a culture of corruption, and they ran hard on it. And that was the Bush era. And it wasn't even remotely like what we're seeing now with the ballroom with the crypto, with all these contracts that are going to well-connected firms, with Jared Kushner doing deals in the Middle East as he's also doing diplomacy in the Middle East. So there's a lot more fodder to work with. And I guess the last thing I would say is that when you talk to Democrats, not just Rahm, about this, like they think that there's an umbrella here around the corruption charges that you can tie it to the Epstein stuff, right? It's like Trump is helping out people who are well-connected, who are rich, who are his friends. He's giving pardons to these people. He's protecting them from disclosures.
1,666 pardons in this term, just so you have the number.
What was that number?
1,666. Now,
I did not know that.
It's extreme.
Wow.
Yes, but, and I'm going to get the other numbers wrong, but the numbers of Bill Clinton, George Bush, Barack Obama, Joe Biden, even Donald Trump in the first term, nobody cracks 300. Okay.
It's crazy.
But remember, the reason we're at, and I'm sure it's higher now, 1,666 is January 6th. But even if you take away January 6th, sort of the pardon trifecta is now in 3 buckets with Trump. There are the January 6th types, almost, people who were charged and convicted of something political that's tied to Trump. Then there are dirty politicians that are super loyal to Trump. Right. And then the third category is people who are paying to get out, right? People who are there is now. I mean, listen, there have always been lots of people don't feel great about pardons. It doesn't matter who the president is. There's tons of ifs, right? The most notable that people will remember in modern history is sort of Bill Clinton going around the system and like, hey, here's Mark Rich. We're gonna pardon him. That kind of started the disdain. Which, by the way, like Clinton Global Initiative is like started the disdain for lots of people saying like, how does all this work? But now you go from there to here. Now you have an entire industry of these newfound lobbyists that people are hiring. They're getting close to the White House. They're getting close to Trump. They're getting in. And then someone in the Trump universe is getting something, whether it's a big investment in a meme coin, whether it's a Don Jr. and an Eric business. That's the third bracket of the people getting pardoned. And to your point, I think people don't feel good about it. But the thing at Milken that's sort of driving a lot of these people, as I'm scratching my head, because the way Glenn Youngkin just framed the Democratic Party, he's like, your most powerful people are the Democratic Socialists. And it sounded like Rahm was trying to say, they're the loudest, right? Like you hear the most from an AOC, or they're not even the loudest, but that's who the right is elevating the most. And I want to get your thoughts on whether you think that's the case. But there was this idea at Milken that the Democratic Party is super far to the left, and they're just here to impose a wealth tax on us. I would actually argue that the wealth tax is coming from Trump. It's coming from these billionaires who have become mega billionaires during Trump 2.0. So you've got the American people who are saying, I'm struggling to put gas in my car. I'm completely worried about unemployment. I don't know what my kids should even study in school because maybe AI is going to take their job and we're about to be saddled with credit card debt. And while that's happening, I can't afford healthcare. And while that's happening, Trump's going to walk out of the White House with $4 billion plus richer. And Mar-a-Lago is filled with people making $1 gazillion. I actually think that is what's fueling the support behind the idea. And I don't think we're going to get a wealth tax. I don't think we're going to get it in California or elsewhere. But I think that's where the idea is fueled from. American people just saying, why does this, and it goes to your point, why does this system not work for me? And the Epstein class who gets hooked up in every possible way are, living like bandits. What do you think?
Yeah. So 2 things. One is, as long as I've been covering this stuff, every cycle, the charge against Democrats is that they're socialists. It's every cycle. And Barack Obama was a socialist. And you look at the record, and obviously that wasn't the case. But he was charged as being a socialist. Let's be clear about it. Even Joe Biden was charged for being a socialist. So it's a bit repetitive. It doesn't mean it doesn't work, but it's a bit repetitive. And I think, look, Mamdani's obviously quite a popular figure, but, he won in the same cycle that Abigail Spanberger won. She's not a socialist. So,
and Mikey Sherrill.
And Mikey Sherrill, too. So I don't know how true it is. But the more interesting debate is what you're talking about, which is is an effective frame for Democrats to say that these guys are kind of running away with fortunes and everyone else is getting left behind. And my mind kind of drifted to this relatively subterranean issue that's popped up in a bunch of races, which is AI data centers. Now, putting aside how you feel about the data centers themselves, I think they represent something bigger, which is this notion that you, Joe, working class guy in this neighborhood, regardless of your politics, believe that your energy costs are going to go skyrocketing because the government's in it to help these incredibly wealthy AI companies. Now, again, the merits may not be true, but the perception is certainly there that all of our political interests are tilted to help the very wealthy, and that people who are just struggling to get by with gas at $4.50 now are going to get soaked. And ironically, it was Trump who really understood this and campaigned. Obviously, he didn't campaign as a socialist, but he campaigned on this idea that the system was rigged against folks who are at the bottom. And so for Glenn Youngkin to say, well, you know, Ram, your party's being overtaken by these voices who want to soak the rich. It's like, yeah, but your party was too. Like, it just happened to be that it was an extremely wealthy real estate tycoon / reality TV figure who perfected the messaging around that. And
Okay, I don't know if he's watching, but Rahm Emanuel just called me 1 second ago.
no, come on, Ram, are you watching?
I just looked at him. Yes, 1 second ago. I'd like to think that he's watching this YouTube right now, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm not going to answer because I don't want. Well, I didn't want to put him on the spot and say, "Hey, we're talking about you on YouTube right now. Do you want to
back? That's good TV. Get the hell out of here. Just tell me. Text him and say we're talking about him right now.
I am. While I do that.
Yeah, do you need a riff while you text?
I think you're making an amazing point about these data centers because people are saying, "What the hell is this thing coming to my town that's not hiring, that's not helping?" It's just this fortress. You know, people look at it as just this fortress of doom, sucking up energy, jacking up the cost, polluting, and politicians haven't made a good case for it yet.
No, and it gets to the larger thing, which is if you have like these, you know, bills that are meant to provide copious tax breaks to the rich, if you have a ballroom that's being constructed with very little understanding of where the funds are coming from, that's not going to cost the taxpayers $1 billion in security funding. If you have contractors making out like bandits in the Defense Department saying, hey, we need $1.5 billion more. If you have private prisons who are profiting because of the ICE. Trillion. Sorry, I said billion. Yeah, You're right. It's trillion. Private prisons getting a bunch of money. You know, all the people who are wealthy. And even I should say on the gas stuff, which is like very in the weeds here, but like Trump's positioned the rise in gas prices as a boon to the gas industry. But it goes to the same exact dichotomy here, which is the people who benefit from rising gas prices are the CEOs of the gas companies. It's not the consumers. And so
we actually have a video question on it. I'm gonna pause you and let's bring the question in.
I'm from New Jersey. I drive a lot, so my question is, when are the gas prices gonna come down? Because this seems like a forever war.
Good question. We had that guy, the Gas Buddy, on. I don't know if you follow him on Twitter, but he's great.
Yeah, I know him.
Yeah, we had him on the program, and the general rule he said is that for every week that the Strait of Hormuz is closed, every day that the Strait of Hormuz is closed, it's going to take a week to get it back online. It's been basically shut down for almost 60 days now, so 60 weeks. So, you know, it's not great. The expectation, I think, is that gas may, if we opened it up tomorrow, could potentially get below $4 by Election Day. Obviously, there's going to be an early decrease because of euphoria that it's reopened, but just getting the supply back online is going to be a lot. Now, I don't fashion myself an expert in this economy per se.
It's going to take a long period of time. Now, what's amazing to me is gas prices and the economy is different from the market. And investors have learned that as long as they stay close to Trump, and as long as they react to Trump, and as long as they keep him happy, he will keep them happy, right? So every day, just today, here, you have Marco Rubio saying, the war's over. The war's not over. You have them putting out this one pager that, what is that one pager going to get you? Nothing. Yet you've got the most sophisticated investors in the world saying, okay, I'll buy that. And the market goes up and the price of oil goes down, right? And that's a huge positive for the market. We're seeing corporate earnings are strong. But remember.
Yeah, but Steph, and I'm curious for your thoughts on this. When do they start kind of getting smart to the game here, right? I'm not saying it's manipulation per se, but at some point, all these early morning stories that, oh, we're so close to a deal, we have a one pager, and the market reacts with euphoria, and then
Okay,
the day
here's
goes
the
by and it's
difference.
like,
Remember, a real CEO that runs a real company, a functioning company, is
yeah,
different from an investor, right? If I'm running a real company, my day is spent figuring out supply chains. I'm figuring out when are the products coming in, who are my consumer, when am I selling them to, what am I doing in terms of growing, hiring, firing, right? Just yesterday, you heard from the Chevron CEO saying that the what's happening in Iran could cause a global crisis because we're talking about gas prices here. The impact is significantly worse around the world. That's different from investors who are just playing the market. Remember, I could be the biggest investor out there, Sam, but I could buy it all right now and sell it all 2 minutes from now. So many investors, right, win the game when it's about volatility. And they're like, sure, Trump says this, I'll buy it, I'll sell it, I'll buy it, I'll sell it. They don't have a long-term holding period. It's significantly worse and more difficult for actual businesses. And when you look at businesses that are not, right, the big tech magnificent seven weren't really impacted by tariffs. They're not impacted by mass deportation. And they are so big and their valuations are so massive at this point, they're overweighted in the market. But when you look at companies below that, many are struggling with a capital S.
Yeah, I still just
So,
wonder how
Ram is in a loud place. He asked me, he's not willing to join us, but he loves that people are talking about Rahm Emanuel 24/7. That is not a surprise to me.
That's amazing that he texted at the time. I still wonder though about this, the people who are just kind of like essentially short, like just playing the markets like this. At some point, does it burst? I mean,
Yes.
it can't just,
And
it can't just be.
By the way, if the AI bubble were to burst, and I don't think that it will, but if it does, then like all bets are off. The bottom is falling out, like disaster city across the board. But what's going to be interesting is Kevin Warsh is going to walk in as Fed chair, and Trump's big wish of like lower rates, lower rates, lower rates. You're not necessarily going to see that in the foreseeable future, given how complicated things are.
Well, and then you add to the fact that it's not like Kevin Warsh can just do it by himself. He's got a whole Fed board structure he's got to get on board here. I don't know if Trump realizes that, and I don't know if Kevin Warsh has told him that, but he could be.
I actually think that like Tom Tillis, and there's no facts behind this, but I have a belief that like Tom Tillis has been in cahoots with Kevin Warsh, holding up Kevin Warsh's confirmation. And Kevin's like, yo, delay it as long as possible. Because the closer Kevin Warsh gets to the midterms, the closer Kevin Warsh gets to Donald Trump actually being a true lame duck president, then he's like, okay, like I realized I had to tap dance, I had to say a lot in order to get this gig. He's wanted this job for north of 10 years, right? Yeah. And he finally got, the golden ring. And I actually think the closer he can get to the end of Trump's term to actually sit in the seat is better for him. But all right, I think we might have a question about Kevin Warsh. Let's play it.
All right.
Oh, it's a written one. Here we go. Stephanie Fiorita has sent it to us from email. What do you think will happen after Kevin Warsh gets confirmed and somehow manages to convince the Fed board to lower interest rates? I don't know that he's going to do that.
I don't know if he is.
Like, I mean, there's a million criticisms of Kevin Warsh, and I'm not saying I like him or I don't like him. But what I am saying is he's highly qualified for the job. And so let's see what he does.
Well, and the other thing is, and I'm curious for your predictions here. I mean, we're getting a little lag on the inflation data, but if these gas prices continue to stay up where they are, it's, the transitory stuff really starts kicking in, and you can't start cutting interest rates at that point, right? I mean, that becomes really problematic.
You can't. Yeah. It would be disastrous. And it's funny, just yesterday or the day before, Ken Griffin from Citadel, who has been critical of the president, big Republican, had one of the biggest hedge fund managers in the world, was based in Chicago, very outspoken critic of Democrats, moved his business down to Miami. He's the guy investing big in Miami. He was saying that inflation was a disaster under Biden and it's better under Trump. Now, if you look at the numbers, inflation went up more under Joe Biden because we were coming out of the pandemic.
Right.
But and listen, we saw the government spend an enormous amount of money trying to dig us out of the pandemic. People don't appreciate that the US had a better outcome in terms of inflation than anyone else in the developed world. And all of the economic pain that we're facing now, Sam, aren't just usually a president is presiding over an economy that has issues. The issues that we are facing as a country economically are directly linked to the president's policies, right? The president's tariffs, the president's war in Iran. These financial economic woes that we face have his name on them.
Yeah, 100%. And it raises the question of what does he and Republicans run on? Because obviously, we spent a lot of time talking about Iran, and I know it's been a topic on your show for a while, rightfully so. But if we're being real about it, voters don't vote on foreign policy. It matters, but they don't. What they do vote on is they vote on economics and pocketbook stuff, and foreign policy feeds into that, especially now. So if you're Trump, what's your plank here? Like, you do what Youngkin did. You say, oh my God, they're all socialists. They want to open the border. They got to do the scare tactic stuff because the economic bill of goods is not as strong as they want them to believe. Now, Trump's out there, and I'm sure we have audio of this, saying the economy is great, consumer confidence is through the roof, yada, yada, yada. It's not. It's really not. Like,
consumers are out there spending, right? Consumers are
they're spending because they have to.
Yes, but also, and we've talked about it ad nauseum, the K-shaped economy is a real thing. Rich people have gotten richer, people who are invested in the market, people who own their homes, but the vast majority of the American people are frustrated, and they're either absolutely struggling and can't make ends meet, or they can make ends meet, but they're saying, why the hell does the world cost this much?
No, and if you look at the data, if you dive into it, like the stuff they're spending on is essentially essentials, right? It's like gas,
Correct.
Food, lodging, and healthcare. Healthcare. I mean, healthcare costs are a real driver. And if you look at the employment data too, which is kind of interesting as well, that also is like most of the hiring is on healthcare. It's healthcare services, and it's because of an aging population. People are sick, and that's where the jobs are. And so,
and by the way, many of those jobs traditionally are occupied by immigrants.
Yes, and
ask me who home healthcare workers are. It's immigrants like that.
This is a big issue down. This is a big issue down in Florida. Actually, we wrote a newsletter on it. I encourage people to read it by Jonathan Cohn. TPS, which is temporary protective status, it helps with people who are leaving affected countries like Haiti. And in Florida, Haitian immigrants are disproportionately home healthcare workers. And the Trump administration is trying to get rid of TPS status for Haitians. And a group of congressional Republicans, predominantly from Florida, voted to keep TPS status intact. Now, it's a kind of a meaningless vote because I think Trump could just do it without, unless the courts get in the way, which they have. But this immigration stuff does bleed into the home healthcare stuff. It does bleed into the economic stuff, bleeds into your food supply. I mean, this is another thing, Steph, to your point of the economy is getting battered by policy decisions of Trump's own making.
Correct. All right, let's turn to one more question because I'm going to lose you soon.
Okay.
How about a question, gang?
Is it Ram?
Video question. Here we go. It's not Ram, but he's watching.
It seems like the Democratic Party is split into two right now, where you have a more progressive wing like Zoran, etc., and then you have a more centrist wing similar to like the Gavin Newsoms of the world. How will this fare, and how will this affect this November's midterms?
Is that for me?
What do you think?
Well,
Yes.
I will say there's two ways it could affect it. One is, in the primary fights, obviously there's a couple important primary elections for Senate, specifically, where you could see that real divide happening. And, it really does matter, obviously, which candidates put forward. But my second point is that I don't think it's going to impact it all that much, honestly. I think this midterm
Tell me
election
why,
is
because this, like, stay on this. Because this is exactly, especially where I just came from, this is their topic, right? That Democrats are 100% super progressive, super far left. That's the party. Tell me why you think it's not going to impact that much.
I mean, it may be that they are more progressive than people the Milken Conference are comfortable with. It may be that they're more progressive than people in the country are comfortable with. But in a midterm election, historically, this is a referendum. And it has nothing really to do with the Democrats. It's really about Donald Trump. And Democrats can play on the margins, and certainly in House races, those margins matter a lot. Less so now that we've done redistricting. But frankly, if the Democrats make this election about what Trump has done in a referendum on his record, they should be fine. They should be able to get people out to vote. They should have an incredible enthusiasm gap. Trump's not on the ballot in the sense that he's not running for anything, and that has proven problematic for Republicans in the past because they need his people to come out. But he is on the ballot spiritually, and this is a chance for voters to demonstrate their disapproval with the president. And he's at like 34% in a lot of these polls. That's the key indicator, not whether or not.
How much do you think the redistricting bonanza that's underfoot is going to impact the midterms?
I mean, obviously a lot, because you now have, what's it going to be, like something closer to like 16 races that are basically off the board, which dilutes the amount of races that are competitive. So now we're talking about House elections that really materially matter in like 15 to 20 races. I mean, it's kind of crazy to think about it. Like, all these votes that are going to be cast in this midterm election are kind of for contests that are pre-decided on the federal level. And what we're really talking about are like 6 and 7 Senate races and 20, 25 House races that you should watch out of millions and millions of votes. But our lawmakers in the House have managed to draw districts where they don't have to really worry about anything other than a primary.
Amazing. There's just one more sound before we leave of Obama that I want you to react to. And actually, I want you to react, but I also, when we come out of this, young progressive star Adam Mockler is going to join us. I want to get his reaction too. So we're going to play this sound and we're going to get a double reaction. Let's go.
Okay.
I'm more interested in, for Democrats, is, do you know how to just talk to regular people like we're not in a college seminar, right? Can you talk plain English to folks? No gobbledygook. Just talk like normal people talk. You know what? Like, the rent's too high. We need to make the rent lower for people.
The rent, we're going back to the rent's too damn high. What's your thought on this?
I remember the Jimmy McWilliams or whatever his name is. The rent is too damn high, can't I? It's funny that Obama
wasn't his name Charlie Rangel?
No, it was not Charlie Rangel. Charlie was a long-serving member of Congress. It was Jimmy Williams or Jimmy McWilliams. He's a mayoral candidate in New York, and he wore leather gloves. He's a weird cat. It's funny that Obama.
But he didn't say it was high. It was too damn high.
Too damn high, yeah.
Yes.
Obama making that critique is funny to me because he's the most professorial person in politics, but he is a very great.
I was thinking that I feel like when I'm at you, I'm like bringing my notebook and going to lecture hall.
Yeah, but he's obviously a gifted communicator, and he can relate, and he can do culturally impactful stuff in a way that almost no other Democrat can. I will say this, maybe over revealing a little bit. I know for a fact that he has felt about Mamdani, that Mamdani's able to communicate. Obama has said this, that Mamdani's able to communicate in ways that are effective in the description that he was talking about there, that he's able to talk normal, that he's able to do normal things like hang out at like a ethnic restaurant and just chill and shoot hoops and relate to people and on a level that is not always achievable for a lot of people who've been in politics forever. And there's a reason, because people who are in politics forever are insulated, they're adulated, they're told how great they are, they believe they should all be president, they become egotistical, they could become conspiratorial, and they become unrelatable. And so it doesn't surprise me that younger generations who are relatively new to politics have a little bit more familiarity about them and are a little bit more comfortable in their own skin. They also are more conversant in the online culture that kind of dominates our world these days. And I think as a larger critique, Obama's absolutely right. One of the reasons Democrats have really lost cultural relevance is that they just don't talk in common verbiage. They don't seem relatable. They don't seem cool, frankly. And so, a lot of this we're talking about, politics as a battle of ideology, and that's true and it's important. But a lot of this is just kind of vibes. Like, would you like to hang out with that person? And
which is, by the way, when you interview someone to work for you, like besides their resume, the top thing is, do I want to look at this person's face? Do I want to hear their voice? Do I want to sit next to them every day?
Sit next to them every day and collaborate with them and like learn from them and work alongside them. It is a huge factor, obviously. And I will say this, like Trump, he understood this. Like people do want to like they for better or worse, they like the guy. They think he's relatable. They like him. They want to hang out with him, or they think they want to hang out with him. And that was his ticket to political fortune.
Do you know, it's funny when I have said that, and it's not a compliment. It is sharing what people's impression is, right? People who have been in his administration and hated it, but have said in person, he's funny, he's this, he's that. When I've said that, people watching lose their mind of like, you're forgiving a fascist for telling a joke. I'm not.
That's not what you're doing.
I'm saying not at all. People say, listen, when you saw all those young men like who then got burned by his policies, just say like, I feel it. You know, I like what he has to say. I did an event I went to Harvard a couple months ago, and with the Harvard Polling Institute, and I spoke to a bunch of students, and they said this thing about the Democratic Party that like just stuck with me. The problem is, it feels like the HR department at work.
Yeah.
Like they may have the best of intentions, but you want to avoid them and their emails and their lectures at all costs. Like even if they have like like we're here to protect you and help, you're just like, no thanks. Like
I'll be all right. Thank you.
Yes, I'm not interested. All right, I know you have to leave. Why? Because you've got editing to do for the amazing work at the Bulwark that people need to watch, they need to read, they need to experience. So thank you for joining me. And
Thanks,
you are going to leave us, and young handsome Adam Mockler is going to join. So thank you, Sam. Adam, are you there? Well, good. Yeah, I'm good. I was going to invite you to do this YouTube show with me in person, but you know, I know you have a tend to get a little violent, so I like to keep my distance.
Yeah, I like to put my hand in people's face, smack them around a little bit. That's my thing.
A little bit.
Yeah.
So we need to have the separation. I believe you just heard what Obama said. Former President Obama said. We're going to play it again just so you have it fresh.
Mm-hmm.
I'm more interested in, for Democrats, is do you know how to just talk to regular people like we're not in a college seminar, right? Can you talk plain English to folks? No gobbledygook. Just talk like normal people talk. You know what? Like the rent's too high. We need to make the rent lower for people.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. A lot of Democrats can use over academic language, and I have a lot of young dude friends who are rather liberal, and they say the Democratic Party is suffocating in the way that they speak, the way that they wag their finger. And I guess Donald Trump appealed with these big, bold, broad, intuitive ideas. Yeah, literally wag finger. Yeah, I guess that is what Democrats do nowadays, huh? But these big, bold, intuitive ideas that Democrats just lacked. Like, let me give you a really concrete example. I remember this viral Kamala Harris tweet that I just pulled up because it perfectly shows how unintuitive Democratic policies are. Kamala Harris tweeted out, quote, "Yesterday I announced that, as president, I'll establish a student loan debt forgiveness program for Pell Grant recipients who start their own business that operate for 3 years in disadvantaged communities." Like, I'm sorry, but at that point, we're so lost in the weeds of the policy. Compare that to...
And if they're left-handed and know how to ride a unicycle, and when they were in the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, they played the left-handed tuba. If you fit into that category, we're including you, and we're here to help.
And by the way, I think Kamala Harris ran a great campaign. She had 107 days and she absolutely killed it. But I think when we're talking about messaging and we compare that to Donald Trump's messaging, he has these 3-letter ideas: build the wall, drill, baby, drill, lock them up. It's obviously all terrible, awful ideas that are infantile and childish. But compared to this Kamala Harris post, this has 20,000 retweets and like 3,000 likes because everyone was like, what does this even mean? Who applies for this exactly? So I think that goes directly back to what Obama was saying. These policies need to be more intuitive. And of course, there's the whole, as a young dude, of course, there's a whole aspect of it. The Democrats can be rather condescending at times, or they were in the past. I think we're starting to see a more open era where people are becoming cool again. But I just think that Democrats need to chill out.
But Adam, I might argue that some of Donald Trump's, 3-word slogans, this and that, are appealing at their core or at their base, right? Like just right. The original slogan of "Make America Great Again," just that does appeal to a lot of people. But then what Democrats need to do is say, exactly what does that mean? How are you going to do that? Show that to me, right? And so think about the economy right now, right? And what they need to do is actually real time fact check him and then show the people what they'll do. I just want to share, we have a little bit of sound of Donald Trump talking about the economy this week. And when I heard it, I was just shaking my head. Watch this.
Our economy is roaring and factory construction is way up. Consumer confidence is way up. Business investment is more than triple compared to that of just a short time ago. And before I took office, nobody can believe it.
So that's just factually incorrect.
Yeah, no.
And so I think Democrats need to stand when that happens, real time, they have to call it out. Because, but where I think when Donald Trump, when he's pushing ideas about the economy that aren't true, he's going to get himself in a pickle because he can push ideas about immigration or foreign policy and you can scare people and people can believe it, even if it's not true, because it's not right in their face. You can't tell people manufacture. I mean, we know for a fact consumer confidence is way down. Consumer spending isn't down, but consumer confidence isn't.
I mean, it's worse than
we,
that. Consumer confidence is at its lowest point in 14 years. Overall, big corporation bankruptcies are at the highest point in 15 years. Farm bankruptcies are up 46% since Donald Trump took office, and inflation has not eased whatsoever. Unemployment among young people, and specifically Black Americans, has skyrocketed. Donald Trump actually had a steady-handed moment with the economy when he took office, but he ruined it with a combination of the Iran War and Liberation Day, which preceded that, plus the big, beautiful bill, which cut benefits for a lot of Americans. So just about every single program that helps Americans, Donald Trump has decided to cut, whether it's medical research, whether it's some sort of benefits, and just about every single way he can shoot himself in the foot and hurt the American people he has by, spiking gas prices and starting these wars. So for him to then go on there and basically make the Biden mistake times 10, there was a phenomenon in the Biden administration where he would, they'd say, we're steady-handed, the economy's bouncing back, but people just didn't really feel that, even if Biden was correct technically in saying that. But Trump is just lying. This is a result of not having reality tests around him or people around him to tell him he shouldn't be straight up lying about the economy being A++++.
We actually have a colleague, Alex Tabbitt, who has been in the field over the last week, just talking to voters and not talking to voters in, not in a focus group, not those who are necessarily engaged, but literally just talking to people on the street. And I think he's ready to join us. I want to bring him in and just get, Alex, are you there?
Yes, Steph.
Here we go. Alex, Alex. You've been in the streets. Tell us where you've been, what the experience has been, who you've spoken to, and all about it. Go.
Yeah, I've spent a lot of time at gas stations, not just in the last week, but in the last couple of months. Many of them in Florida, just came from a couple in Montgomery, Alabama, North Carolina, a lot throughout the Southeast. And basically I've been visiting these gas stations 2 or 3 times a week, interviewing people as they're filling up the pump since this war began. I just want to give you like a quick example of, some of the things I'm hearing. I asked some of the people at these gas stations to describe how they feel about the state of the economy in one word. And the answers I got were desolate, really bad, awful, ridiculous, horrible, a tragedy, and really, really blanked up. I'll let you fill in that blank. About half of those respondents were people who had voted for President Trump in 2024. So you're hearing from everyday people at the gas pump when cost is at the front of mind because they're seeing that total go up and up and up quicker than ever, a sense of economic exasperation. And you're hearing from certain members of the MAGA base, diehard Trump voters, many of whom I spoke to in Alabama and also in Florida, a willingness to trust the process and a willingness to be patient with President Trump. But you can feel as each week goes on, this patience starting to wear thin as we're now obviously more than 60 days into this war, Steph.
But they're feeling, actually, I think we have some sound, do we? Let's watch it.
So, yeah.
I think he's arguing that the ballroom is going to be paid for by donors, but he says that he needs it for safety. There was a shooting at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. Do you think the ballroom should be the focus of the president right now?
No, sir. The American economy needs to be the focus of the economy right now. I mean, of the people right now. The American economy, everybody's suffering.
I think there's a lot of things we need to work on before we're doing a ballroom reconstruction, so I think it's a little ridiculous to me.
A ballroom is kind of insufficient right now. That's just my thought, that's my opinion. I really can't say what's going to happen, but at the same time, you got to understand that there's people out here suffering. There's people out here struggling. There's no food. We can't really survive out here.
And that last man you spoke, or you just heard speaking, he works at a Wendy's. He voted for President Trump the last 3 elections. When I asked him if he regretted his vote, he said no, he's still sticking with President Trump, but he's hoping that these prices come down and come down quick. Otherwise, he might have to rethink his political allegiances. Steph?
Can I just ask, I know you don't know, and Adam, I want you to weigh in. When you think about these voters, people who voted for President Trump several times, who may be disillusioned and he's lost their support. Given just your experience, do you think come the midterms, come the next election, they're going to turn around and vote for a Democrat, or they're just going to say this system don't work for me and they're not going to vote?
From the conversations I've had, I think it's the second option. I'm hearing a kind of fed up feeling with just government and politics writ large. A lot of the people who I've spoken to, not just at gas stations, but at Trump rallies and at all these events leading up to the 2024 presidential election, they continue to see their vote for President Trump as a protest vote, as a middle finger to the system, as raging against the political machine. And what's happening now is some of those people are starting to believe that actually President Trump is just like everything else, everything that they were fighting against, they were protesting against, they were standing up against. He's just this same part of that same system, which doesn't benefit people like them.
Adam, I want you to weigh in on this, and we actually have a video question in this vein, but I think it's super important. Oh, it's a chat question. I think it's super important because when people grow so disillusioned, people who were active voters, and then they truly feel like this system doesn't work for me, and they stop voting, that's a huge, huge problem. Like it should be a giant priority for this country to have voter participation as absolutely high as we possibly can. So when we have people who were part of the system who simply say, this does not work for me, I'm out of the game, I think it's terrible. We have a question in this. So let me just get to the question and then I want you to weigh in, Adam. And it's coming to us from Spence Karaoke. I wish he was singing it to us. Okay. If the cost of living is inevitably still high come 2028, will Dems get blamed? I'm going to wait on this. First, you respond to what we're just talking about, Adam.
No, yeah, that's a good question at the bottom. But I think there's a fundamental distrust in both parties right now among the average person. If you just remove us, the people watching this right now, we're very engaged in politics and we understand that the corruption on either side is not the same, that the breaking of Constitution on both sides is not the same. But when Donald Trump ran and promised that he was not going to start any new wars and he was going to end inflation on day one, then he did a 180 and reversed on those promises. That breaks trust with the voter base. But people don't automatically trust the Democratic Party. Actually, we're quite unpopular right now, very unpopular. A lot of voters view us as having covered up some sort of Biden scandal, especially after he dropped out of the race. This is going to be a huge question that is asked in 2028 among the primary. Just wait until, Gavin Newsom's on stage or all of these other Democrats that I personally like. They're going to be asking, what did you say back in 2024 during the election? So the Democratic Party isn't very well trusted at this moment. The Republican Party is burning through any goodwill they had with voters very rapidly by 180ing on any promise that they made, and that creates more voter apathy. A lot of young people are apathetic, and when someone like Zohran Mamdani wins, who's sort of like a middle finger to the system, everybody will say, oh, these young people are turning communist, socialist, but it's not that. It's not even like a hardcore belief in socialism. It's just that people aren't invested in a system that they view as having screwed them over. So just to return back, the corruption on the Republican side is like infinitely higher than the Democratic side. It's very, very obvious. But obviously, yeah. But to the average voter, they just view it as all corrupt. And I've been to a few Trump rallies. I've been to like 40 Trump rallies. I'm sure Alex has been to way more Trump rallies. But at those Trump rallies, you hear just a level of apathy.
All right, let's go to this question because it gets a little more detailed. Okay, if the cost of living is inevitably still high come 2028, will Democrats get blamed if back at the wheel after the midterms and potentially lose another presidential election? That's a good question. Because here's the thing. Let's say Dems turn it around in the midterms. They're not going to be able to undo what's happened with the economy necessarily. Are voters going to give them a beat? Or do Democrats need to offer something other than just not Trump? And I want to, Adam, I want you to answer first, and then I've got a separate question. Alex.
Yeah, we obviously need to develop a platform that is way more than anti-Trump. I'm not sure the Democrats will get directly blamed for the economy because Donald Trump talked about the economy in the most grandiose manner possible when taking office and when he entered office, and even now. He says A+++++. He has dug in on this idea that the economy is in a golden age. He said he was going to end inflation. People aren't going to forget that. He is going to continue to spiral when it comes to polling on gas prices and all of this other polling. So I think that Democrats need an affirmative vision. We need something beyond anti-Trump. And when Democrats are in Congress, I don't know if voters will blame a poor economy on them. Trump was pretty loud about what he was going to do regarding the economy. People aren't going to forget that. And if he does try to blame it on like Biden, if we're like 700 days into the presidency and he's still blaming things on Biden and the Democrats, he's cooked at that point.
Alex, when you talk to people on the street, is everything doom and gloom, or are they excited about things?
It's rough. It's definitely rough. I've heard people tell me that they're choosing between eating and driving, that they're skipping out on medications because they will need to be able to fill up the tank so they can go to work. It's really sad. Some of the stories that I've heard in the last couple of months, it feels suffocating for a lot of people. And each time I go back to the gas station, I probably go 2 or 3 times a week now, and I've been going for 2 months. It seems to be getting worse. So
I want to share what Kevin Hassett, one of the president's national economic advisors, said about the economy, because it's interesting given what Alex just said. Watch this.
In fact, I had the head of one of the big 5 banks in my office yesterday going through the credit card data. And just as Secretary Bessent said, credit card spending is through the roof. They're spending more on gasoline, but they're spending more on everything else, too. And so in terms of the jobs picture for the rest of the year, it's really hard to see having the unemployment rate go up, for example. It's probably going to drop a little bit, but it's already very close to full employment.
Here's what's interesting, Alex. He's framing it like, look at this. People are out there spending. They're spending and they're putting it on their credit cards because they have to, right? What he said is credit card spending is up, but credit card debt is up too. And so you've got this tale of two countries. Do you feel like that's what you're hearing from people?
I've heard a lot of people tell me that they're canceling vacations, that they're making sure that if they do book plane tickets, it's refundable because they're not sure if they're actually going to be able to afford the trip when it all is said and done. I'm sure there's discretionary spending, but I'm pretty sure there's some data that in the last couple of years, most of the discretionary spending is being done by the top 5 or 10% of society, not the everyday Americans. And it's just I have to be honest with you, Steph, it's sad, talking to these people every day about I didn't eat today so that I could go and drive my mom to her doctor's appointment. It's heartbreaking. And it's every time I go out to the gas station, you'll hear another one of those stories. It's difficult to say the country is in a good place right now.
Alex, thank you. Thank you for this reporting. It's super important. And thank you for joining us today. All right, Adam, I'm going to hit you with a surprise question. I don't even know what one it's going to be. Here we go. This one's via email. Michelle W. Who pays for all of these bogus Trump indictments? Whoa. We do. Do you think any of that hits the American people? Like when you think about all that's being spent, right? I didn't even touch all that Donald Trump is doing, all that we're spending, right? Think about the Department of Justice going after Jerome Powell for misrepresenting or overspending when it comes to the Federal Reserve renovations. Do you think people realize this is where so much of our tax dollars, or this is where so much of our money is going?
I mean, for the rest of my life, I'll remember that Truth Social post that Donald Trump sent out aimed at Pam Bondi saying, Pam, I need you to go after these three people, Comey, Letitia James, and Adam Shifty Schiff, as he calls him, right? And 2 out of 3 of those indictments actually went through and then failed immediately. Lindsay Halligan actually ended up getting kicked out in the Eastern District of Virginia. The question about if people understand that this is where our taxpayer dollars are going, I actually don't think so. Again, I've talked to a lot of voters, not nearly as many as Alex has, but I've been to Trump rallies. I've talked to people on the Democratic side. The things that we think really break through obviously don't. I talked about January 6th for years and the fake elector scheme for years and the fact that John Eastman's wacky unconstitutional legal theories need to be swatted down. I used to think that the fake elector scheme was perhaps the best example of corruption in like American history. Donald Trump's fake elector scheme right before January 6th. The average person I talk to doesn't really care about that. They care about the gas prices that they view when they pass. Now, when we watched those interviews just a moment ago with Alex, the ballroom actually is breaking through. That one is absolutely breaking through. I think it's just such an egregious display of grandiosity that Donald Trump is rather obsessed with at a time when he's at war. We're all at war with Iran, apparently, and he can't get out. He can't find an off-ramp. We're either leading to a massive escalation or a humiliating climb down over the next few weeks. And he's sitting there showing the blueprints of his ballroom. That type of stuff breaks through. And that's what happens when you elect a narcissistic former celebrity president who just wants to build gold things rather than someone who's thoughtfully thinking this out. Yeah.
A ballroom that is not going to serve any of the American people. And again, one that he had already solicited tens of millions of dollars from private donors, from corporations. And he repeatedly said he's going to pay for it personally, and then they would. And now we're turning, and it appears it's going, or Republicans want the American taxpayer to. There's one more thing the president seems to be talking a lot about, and it's not the war, and it's not tariffs, and it's not the economy. It's the reflecting pool. Watch this.
We have a beautiful, potentially beautiful, built in 1922, it's a long time ago, reflecting pond. And I said, I built all these swimming pools, and they're phenomenal. We sandblasted it, we pebble blasted, you know what pebble blasting, that's a serious sandblast. A great, beautiful blue color, American flag blue, as opposed to gray.
So I want to end this conversation with this. There are many, many things that matter to the American people: pocketbook issues, healthcare issues, education issues. And this is what we hear from our president. And I know the majority of the American people, the people who watch you, listen to you, watch me, they're not watching every press conference. They're not watching the news all day. But what do people think when they see this, when they hear this?
I mean, that was like 8 minutes of pure slop. I don't even know.
8 minutes.
Yeah, I don't even know how to describe that other than demented. When the American people hear something like that, I mean, here's the thing. If that were Biden, there would be headlines in every single newspaper times 1,000. I know it's a really trite talking point. What if that were Biden? What if that were Biden? But seriously, if Obama were requesting like $1 billion for a ballroom while ranting about a reflecting pool, it would be Fox News headlines over and over and over ad nauseum, just constantly bombarding, carpet bombing our screens. Yet when Donald Trump does it, it just kind of blends in with the rest of the awful things he's doing. I don't know. I don't know if that breaks through to the average American. I think that I can't even believe he ranted about that for that long. I don't even think I have the stamina to rant about a topic like that for that long. The reality is he views himself as some sort of builder, as some sort of person who's a man of history that needs to leave his legacy and build things while he's there. But in doing so, it's a derelict of his real duty as the president of the United States, supposed to be serving the American people, not himself.
All right, then. Adam, thank you for joining me today. Thank you for everyone who wrote us, who sent us all these questions. I think it's super important. What we want to try to do is solve the questions, or at least answer the questions that are plaguing the American people, because what we don't want is for people to say, this system doesn't work for me, I'm out. I'm tuning out, I'm not voting, I'm not engaging, because the most important thing people need to be, doesn't matter who you ultimately vote for, I think, is to be informed and engaged. And after the last 55 minutes, hopefully people are a little more informed and a little more engaged. Adam, thank you for joining me today. And thank you for everybody who joined us.
Thank you. Let's do it again soon.
For real. And Ali Velshi, you're homesick. Get better soon, brother. All right.